Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the college live stream. My name is Ian McConaughey. I work in undergraduate admissions and outreach at the university. I'm joined today by a few panelists who are going to talk to you about colleges. So we have representatives from 3 different colleges here. I'll let them introduce themselves in a moment. Today we're going to talk about the collegiate system generally, and then we're going to look at some particular things and hear about the 3 colleges that are represented here today, and also more generally about the university. And then at the end of the session, we'll have some time for some questions that you've submitted. Let's go around, introduce ourselves. We'll start with Catherine.
Hi everyone, my name is Catherine. I am the Schools Liaison Outreach and Recruitment Officer at the Queen's College. So my job is to work with schools and students across the UK, but primarily in our college's link regions, which are in the northwest. That's Blackburn with Darwin, Blackpool, Lancashire and Cumbria, and 2 boroughs in London, Lewisham and Sutton.
Okay, let's go with Lizzie then.
Hi everyone, I'm Lizzie. I do a similar job to Kat in that I'm an Access and Outreach Officer here at St Edmund Hall, and prior to that I was actually a geography student here at St Edmund Hall.
And finally, Danielle.
I'm Danielle, so I'm still a student here. I'm just going into my final year at St Hugh's and I study law, so I'm happy to answer any questions on the student perspective as well.
Great, thanks everyone. So we'll start by just talking about the collegiate system generally. The collegiate system might seem like this strange thing if you've not seen it before. Some people think of the colleges as just sort of blocks of accommodation, but actually they're a lot more than just that. So they are like accommodation, but they're actually sort of like their own miniature campuses. So as well as having accommodation, there'll be other amenities. So a dining hall, they might have a bar, some colleges have a gym, and then there may also have academic facilities as well, or they will also have academic facilities. So they'll have a library, they may have other study spaces too. The college is also part of the sort of the academic life of the student. So you'll have tutors at the college that will usually teach you in college itself for your small group teaching. Your larger group teaching, so lectures, would take place somewhere else, so in the department with students from all colleges, but your small group teaching is likely to be with tutors in your own college, possibly based in the college itself. One of the things we're often asked is how you actually go about choosing a college. So what we'll do is we'll go around and ask everyone for their opinions on this. But first of all, the very first thing that you definitely have to do is check whether the colleges you're looking at offer the course you want to apply for. So this does depend a bit on the course you're applying for. So if you're applying for a subject like law or history, they're very big subjects. They're usually represented by most colleges. There are some more specific subjects. So for instance, computer science and philosophy, that's quite a specific subject. That's not offered at as many colleges. So you may need to look at the list, and you can find the list on the website and in the prospectus. But putting that to one side, let's say you've already done that and you know which colleges offer your course. Let's start with Catherine. Catherine, how would someone decide which college they want to go to?
I would say there is really no right or wrong way when it comes to trying to choose a particular college. It's really what is right for you. So by taking part in this virtual open day, hopefully you've had the chance to explore lots of different colleges online and find out a little bit about what they could offer you in terms of their facilities, what sort of atmosphere that they have. I think every single Oxford student thinks that their college is the best, whether or not it was a college they put down on their UCAS form or a college that they were assigned to, or if they made an open application. Everyone is very, very proud of the college they end up at. But things you might like to consider, anything that would be important to you. So perhaps you want to see if the college would offer you accommodation for all the years of your degree, or if you would have to live out for part of that. The sort of facilities and amenities they have. So some of the things that Ian mentioned, things like, does the college have a gym if you're really sporty, or sports pitches? What's the college bar like if you want to use that space to socialise? All those different factors you might take into consideration. But nobody throughout the process is going to quiz you. If you got through to an interview, no one's going to say, why did you pick Queen's, or why did you pick St Edmund Hall? Why did you pick St Hugh's? They're going to be quizzing you on why you picked your particular subject. So really it's a personal choice for you.
Great, thank you. Let's hear from Danielle next then.
So I guess rather than giving, like, there's not really, as Catherine said, a technical way to decide. And if I'm honest, when I picked, I kind of just went off what I felt like the vibe was. I got a really good impression of St. Hugh's when I visited, and you can still do that online. So I really don't think you need to overthink it too much. There's a few factors you'll want to take into account. So, for example, do you want to be in a bigger college, or would you prefer a smaller, more close-knit college? And perhaps for disabled students, you might want to consider things like, do you want to be in a more modern college with maybe some more accessible facilities and that kind of thing? But apart from that, it's really important not to overthink it so much. When I visited St. Hugh's, I just got a really good impression from it. I really liked the gardens, everyone seemed really friendly. So I just went for that. And also the other thing not to worry about too much is actually the tutors, because whilst a lot of your teaching will be done by your college tutors, it won't impact what you study. So, for example, if you want to study human rights law or medical law in your final year, and there isn't a tutor that specialises in that, you'll then go to another college for that tutorial. So that's what you don't need to worry about. So don't overthink it, just think about where could you see yourself living for 3 years, and take factors of consideration of some of the factors that Catherine mentioned as well.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I think that's a very good message, is not to worry about the academic side, which will be the same whichever college you go to, even if you may have some tutors that would teach you at particular colleges and not others. They'll always make sure that you have appropriate teaching staff available to provide your tutorials. Lizzie, you're back. Let's ask Lizzie the same question then. So, Lizzie, what would you recommend for people trying to choose a college?
I think I'd recommend, I don't know if it's already been mentioned, but I think I'd look at the sort of the social side of things that they offer. So some people like a college where there's lots of chances to just go out and be that kind of social, and some people might look for something that's a bit quieter. And a really good way of getting a measure for that is actually look at the social media the college has. So not necessarily the sort of official college Twitter account, but anyone you could find run by the students, run by the JCR. So at Evans Hall, for example, our students run an Instagram account, and they do sort of day in the lifestyle videos, they do takeovers, and it gives you a kind of sense of the kind of people we have here, kind of community we've got, and the sort of things they get up to. So if you can find any JCR accounts like that, they'll talk about perhaps some of the activities that happened in Freshers Week last year, the socials they've managed to do during COVID, which you never know, might be relevant for the upcoming terms. So I really recommend having a look at these sort of student side of things, those alternative prospectuses, and that social media to get a feel for this.
Great. I hope that's helpful for people who are thinking how they're going to decide which college to apply to. We're going to talk about a few different aspects of college life. So we'll start by talking about sort of societies and the social life aspect. So perhaps we can start with Danielle. I just wonder if you could tell us a bit about the kind of clubs and societies that are on offer at colleges.
Sure. So there is so much. There's pretty much any society you could imagine, from sports, the obvious ones being things like rowing, but then there's the much more niche sports as well. I think we've even got Quidditch that's played at some colleges, lots of art and drama societies, we've got a creative writing society, so there really is something for everyone. Also, if you've got a project idea, then the JCR will often fund money for you to actually bring that project to life. So if you did turn up and on the off chance there wasn't something that really interested you, that wouldn't be a barrier, because then you could actually just start your own society. So there's a really nice range of societies which can be more serious, so some of the sporting societies if you're playing at a high level, but also some more casual societies as well. So for example, at St. Hugh's, I know we've got like a B team netball team that play every couple of weeks, and it's a much more casual society than some of the other sports societies. So yeah, there really is something for everyone.
Great, perhaps I'll go to Lizzie next.
Yeah, I think the social life of a college is one of the best bits about having that system. Like Danielle mentioned, you often get that 2 levels of opportunity. So we've got quite a lot of second sports teams as well. So if you're up for sort of a casual kickabout in football, both for men's and for women's football, we have mixed hockey teams and stuff like that. They're much more laid back, which is quite enjoyable. Some colleges give you opportunities to do things like activism or campaigning as well. So lots of them will have student ambassador schemes where you can get involved in access and outreach, talking to young people perhaps from underrepresented backgrounds about university. That can be a really enjoyable thing to do. We also have lots of environmental initiatives going on at St Edmund Hall at the moment. So we were out with some staff and students doing biodiversity surveys of our sites last week, which was really fun, looking at what bird life we've got. Counting worms was even one of the exercises, so we can try and improve the biodiversity of our site. We even have some students who do environmental projects to look at where we could improve our carbon footprint, for example. So there's a massive range of different things you can do, whatever interests or aspirations you might have.
Great. And let's go to Catherine as well.
Yeah, I'd say very much the same at Queen's in terms of if you want to do something really competitively, a sport or music or drama, or if you just want to do something really casual, like just as Lizzie said, a kickabout on a Saturday morning, you can do that as well. Our student ambassadors were actually debating this morning in answer to some of the open day questions, whether or not we were more sporty or more musical, and they were very divided as to which way we fell as a college at the moment. Obviously that would change depending on which students come to the college and what their interests are, but they were very torn. There were some people who were like, we're really sporty, we're very musical. I think luckily we've got students who do both of those kind of hobbies. Particularly on the music side of things, we've got the oldest music society at Oxford, which is a pretty cool accolade, and they put on musical theatre performance every summer outside in the gardens, which is very, very popular, and students from other colleges will come and watch that. And on the sports side of things, we've got a range of different teams for different sports. We've got sports pitches that are about a 15-minute walk away from the main college site, and that's for football, rugby, tennis, anything that you might like to play, you could get stuck in and involved with. So there's always plenty going on.
Great, thank you. I think one thing that some of our viewers might be concerned about, we often get questions about, is how students manage to balance the work they need to do for their degree with the other activities they want to do and their social life more generally. Maybe we could answer some, talk about that for a minute. Let's start with Lizzie.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's one of the big challenges of coming to university is kind of making your own timetable. It's not like school where everything is kind of planned out for you. You have to be a bit more independent. Personally, I was a boom and a bust worker, so I do sort of 3 or 4 days of really intense work and then I have 3 or 4 days off in the week, and that was how I like to do it. My degree enabled me to do that, so I sort of have my weekend whenever it was convenient to have it. I think that's the big thing. It's not really a Monday to Friday thing, a degree, unless you really want it to be. If I had deadlines on certain days, then I would work in the days in advance to that, and it might end up being that I had sort of Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday off in a week, something like that. It'll be a bit hit and miss, and I think a lot of people take time to find that balance. But there'll be strategies that work for everyone. Some people might like to designate time or even use a timer on the desk. I'm going to work for this hour, then I'll have my time off. I personally used to allocate most of my evenings for work because most of my activities happen during the day. So for me, it was about going, okay, I'll work that evening, I'll have that evening off, and just timetabling a little bit in advance. That was what I used to do.
Great. Let's hear from Catherine next.
I would definitely echo exactly what Lizzie said. It might sound a little bit teachery or parenty, but it is about learning to manage your own time. And I'm sure that's a skill that is probably coming to many of you watching. If you're in year 12 or year 13, throughout sixth form, you probably get a little bit more independence. For those of you who are younger, who are watching at the GCSE stage, that is something that will come and that you will learn. And as Lizzie said, some people are in the process of learning that at university. It takes everyone sort of a different amount of time. But I think if you know that there's something social you really want to do, maybe you've got rehearsals for a play or you are going to watch your friends in a sports match, putting that in the diary and making sure you've also got all your academic commitments in your diary, and knowing that if you've got a rehearsal on Thursday night but you've got an essay due in Friday morning, that you've done that essay Thursday daytime and handed it in, so you're not there worrying whilst you're at your social engagement that you haven't done the work that you need to do. So it is all about finding that balance, and I think that it takes a little bit of time, but it is certainly possible to do.
Great. Let's hear from our current student about this then. So Danielle, you tell us about this.
So I think it definitely did take me a bit of time. I think that what students tend to find is that if you're doing a society at a very high level, you're playing, for example, very competitive sport, you might only have time for 1 or 2 societies. But if you're doing more casual societies, you might have time to do more of them. So there is that balance. But I think that there is time. I think that your tutors do understand that obviously you've never been to university before, and you might be learning in a different way. So I've asked for extensions in the past. And also, I think students do learn over the course of the first couple of terms not to be too much of a perfectionist. Sometimes you have to get the work done and hand it in and make sure that you actually are quite strict and carve out, this is the time that I work and then this is my free time. But it is manageable. And also the nice thing about colleges is that you will have college parents who not always but often are in your subject. And often people are really close with people who are in who do their subject in the year above. And this is really beneficial because I know if I've ever struggled to get work done, they've been like, right, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to plan your days. And that was really helpful. So there are lots of people, both tutors and students, on hand to help.
Great. And staying with you, Danielle, just another question. So how is it that other students, because we've talked a lot about the sort of college setup, but do students meet other students from other colleges as well? How does that normally happen?
Yeah, they do. So it will depend a little bit on what you're interested, if you join university-wide societies or college societies. So for example, most of my closest friends are in my college, but not all of them. I did joint tutorials with people from another college and became friends with them. And I'm also part of a university-wide magazine, so I know some friends through that. So there are definitely plenty of ways of meeting people. We've also got some amazing liberation campaigns. So the Disabled Students campaign, for example, I've been part of that and met lots of other disabled students through that. We've also got the BME campaign, things like Christian Union, and those campaigns are really good ways of meeting students from across the university, if that's what you want to do, or if you prefer to have friends mainly in college. Lots of people find that great as well.
Great. So we'll go on to talk a bit about sort of facilities in college. And I guess the two main things of interest here are food and accommodation. So we'll start with food. I wonder, Lizzie, if you could tell us a bit about the sort of food provision at St Edmund Hall.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got pretty great food at St Edmund Hall, but I'd say excellent food. Our head chef was previously head chef at a restaurant with a Michelin star, so he really knows what he's doing. You can really tell that when you come and eat here. Our food is done so you prepay for your breakfasts and you prepay for your dinners. And most people tend to have most of those, but if, like me, you were studying a subject where you weren't usually out of bed in time for breakfast, then you could get a portion of those refunded, or you could actually sell them on to other students. We have an exchange scheme, so students who always were up in time for breakfast, you know, your rowers, some of the scientists, they would buy breakfast off those of us who had later timetables. So yeah, the food is fantastic. We also have kitchen facilities in all of our accommodation, both on-site and in our annexes. And so because lunch is on a pay-as-you-go scheme, quite a lot of students will actually make their own lunches in those facilities. So whether you want to cook for yourself or whether you'd like to go and eat in the dining hall, you absolutely can. We also have the second biggest dining hall in Oxford, so everyone can fit into it all in one go. You can come down anytime meals are being served and sit with your friends, which is really nice. Good social space.
Great. Let's go for Catherine next.
Yeah, so for food at Queen's, we also have got a beautiful dining hall, not quite as big as Teddy Hall's. I've had lunch in Teddy Hall's and it's massive, so not quite as big, but very old and grand. So it's a lovely space for students to eat. How the way meals work at Queen's is that for breakfast and lunch, you pay for what you eat. So if you don't fancy coming down for breakfast, if you are running a bit late and you don't have time, you don't have to. So you just pay for what is on your plate. On average, we tend to find that students spend between sort of £2 and £3 for breakfast and then again for lunch. So not too expensive. And that could be for a 2-course meal for lunch as well. Dinner is a sit-down meal, so students have to book on for that. When I say sit-down meal, that doesn't mean you have to dress up fancy. You could just turn up wearing something casual, doesn't matter. But it is sort of everyone has the same meal. So it's a bit like having dinner with a very large family. But it's one of the nicest things about for our students at Queen's is that they get to have this sort of meal at the end of the day with all of their friends, people from other year groups. and sort of this chance to socialise and catch up at the end of a very busy day. Like most colleges, we also have formal halls as well, where you can dress up in something a bit more fancy, and these are pretty reasonable. They're about sort of £10 for a 3-course meal, alcoholic or non-alcoholic sort of bottle of drink, if you'd like to have that. Yeah, and they're a very nice excuse to have a bit of a celebration, and people bring their friends or their family along to that as well. We don't have kitchens on our main site. We've just got one main kitchen attached to our common room that our students share. So most students do quite enjoy the fact that they can just eat in hall and they don't have to worry about cooking for themselves. But in 2nd and 3rd year in our annexes, we do have more kitchens that students can use if they wanted to cook for themselves.
Great, thank you. And Danielle, can you tell us about St Hugh's?
Sure. So St Hugh's again is a little bit different because every meal is pay as you go. So you have the option of you could eat in college for 3 meals a day, 5 days a week, or you could cook completely for yourself. And most of St Hugh's rooms all have fairly decent kitchens. So it is an option to cook for yourself the whole time if you wanted to. So we also are on a pay as you go system so that there's no commitment there. And then at weekends, St Hugh's doesn't serve lunch or dinner, it just does St Hugh's brunch, which I think is quite infamous. We've got a full English breakfast on Saturday and Sundays if you want, or waffles. So it's a really nice time to chat to people about their weeks and talk about what you're going to do over the weekend. In terms of variety of food, there's lots. Food is always really good. We've actually got 2 canteens. So we've got the main hall food, which tends to be quite cheap but really good portions. So a main meal would be anything from £2 to about £3.50. And then we've also got the Dixon Poon Food Hall, which is the Wordsworth Tea Room, and that tends to be slightly more expensive, sort of £4 to £6 for lunch, but you get more kind of restaurant quality food there. So I really like the fact you have choice. Sometimes if I finished a tutorial and I want to spend some time with friends chatting over lunch, I'll go to the Wordsworth Tea Room, but most of the time I go to hall, and it's really nice to see everyone there as well.
Great, thank you. So it's probably worthwhile us talking about accommodation as well. So let's start with Catherine. Just tell us a bit about how accommodation works for Queen's and the years that you get accommodation and the variation between rooms.
Of course, yes. So accommodation at Queen's, we're pretty lucky at Queen's in that we can offer accommodation for students across all years of their degree. So you don't have to look for a private landlord. So that's quite handy. It's all sort of your bills and accommodation is all handled through college. So you don't have to worry about those kind of things. We're also quite unique in Queen's in that we offer a ballot system. So it means that there aren't sort of rooms within college that cost more or less than any other. So that means that we don't get sort of pockets of college that maybe, you know, have got very fancy rooms or rooms with a really beautiful view or something like that that are bought out by students who could afford to pay for more. Everyone pays exactly the same price, and the rooms are randomly allocated at the start of first year. If you ended up getting maybe a bit of a smaller room, or maybe a room, you know, without an ensuite or something like that in your first year, you would then be top of the ballot for second year. So you'd be first to make your choice, and then that ballot would then be flipped in third year. Of course, if you needed a particular room, maybe for mobility or medical or religious requirements, then as long as you contacted the college after you've received your offer, we can accommodate that and make sure that you are sort of exempt from the ballot and that your needs and your room can be accommodated for, and that can be met first. All our first year students currently live on the main site or our attached annex, which is about, I'd say, a 15-second walk from the main Queen's entrance to Carradus Quad, which is the annex, which is actually joined to St Edmund Hall, so right next door. And those rooms have all got en suites. They're pretty comfortable. It's much more modern than the main site. And then for second, third and fourth year, if you're doing a 4-year degree, students typically live in one of our further out annexes that are about a 10 to 15-minute walk from the main site. Some students do choose to come back into main site for third year, because obviously that's nice and close to the library and the dining hall whilst they're studying for their finals. But yeah, we're pretty fortunate in that we can provide students with accommodation across the whole way through, because we've got a nice big site with lots of accommodation available.
Great. Let's go to Lizzie next.
Yeah, so we've got a slightly contrasting approach at St Edmund Hall, right next door to Queen's as we are. So in first year, it's a pretty similar system in that everyone is randomly allocated to a room. All the rooms are the same. They've got lots of storage, their own sinks. They're all pretty good size as well. My best friend used to do yoga in her room. We could really stretch out, so you're guaranteed a nice good size. And some of them have fantastic views over Oxford as well. And on each of those, organised along, you'd have kitchens and bathrooms that you'd share with students, which is quite a nice way of getting to know people. Now in second year at St Edmund Hall, we do ask you to live out, so to go and rent privately, but I actually really liked that opportunity. It meant I got kind of a practice run at adulting before I was actually out in the real world. And it meant I got to live with my friends for a year as well, because in most Oxford colleges, at the end of term, you have to pack up your room and move all of your stuff back out. Whereas if you're renting your own home, it's yours as long as you like it. Also gives you that much more privacy and independence. You can have house parties if you want to. You can't do that on the college site. So that was a really nice perk for my second year. And then in third year, what we do at St Edmund Hall is we have a ballot system like many colleges. The person at the top of the ballot gets to choose first, and so on. And we have some historic rooms. We've got some ensuite rooms. We've got about 70 new ensuite rooms going into our main site, which is really exciting. And we've got some really nice annexes, which are close to pubs and cafes and shops in East Oxford as well. Now, that some people that what we've actually done for a number of years is had our college year have handed their houses down to people in first year. So the whole street of houses that are mostly lived in by Teddy Hall students. So it's a really nice community that's formed out in East Oxford.
Great, thank you, Lizzie. I think we did lose you for a second there, but I think we got most of what you were saying, so don't worry.
I'm in a historic bit of college, so the Wi-Fi is slightly recording in this room.
And Danielle, how about the accommodation at St Hugh's?
So at St Hugh's, you're guaranteed accommodation for all years of your undergraduate degree, which I found really nice as like a safety net. I didn't need to organise that in my first year. And you can opt to live out if you want, but you don't have to, which is something that I found really convenient. In first year, most students live in the main building, which is really nice because all the rooms are kind of on the same few corridors. So you get to meet lots of people very quickly. And it also means that it doesn't matter too much if you're not really close friends with the people you're living right next to, because actually there's loads of people on the corridor just down from you that you can be friends with as well. So that's really great. We have a similar system to Queen's, so rooms cost the same for everybody, which again I think is really great because it means that you don't have pockets of college where people are paying more for nicer rooms, and it's very fair. So if you have a smaller room one year, you're likely to get a bigger room maybe with an ensuite the next year, so it all works out fairly. I also really like the fact that in third year, lots of students choose to ballot as a group for one of the houses which are dotted around college. And that's a really nice opportunity to get that, I guess, get closer to the experience of living out because you're in a house and you're sharing it with your friends, but you still have the conveniences of college, like Hall is only 30 seconds away and that sort of thing. So I think the accommodation system we've got is really brilliant. And again, we also have a welfare ballot that takes place before the general ballot. So if you're a disabled student or you've got any welfare needs, then you can opt for a room before everyone else to make sure those needs are met. And whilst living in college means that most students do move out, if your personal circumstances are such that it might be difficult for you to move out, then I've known in the past that allowances are made so that people can stay for 9 months and that sort of thing. So you don't need to worry about that if you're thinking now, I wouldn't be able to move back home after term time. That can be accommodated for.
Great, thank you. Actually, that sort of answers my next question as well, at least with St Hugh's, which is about shared accommodations. We often get questions about whether students have to share a room. And I think in most cases, and I'll let the panel answer in a moment, in most cases, if you are sharing, you usually share a living space, but actually have separate bedrooms. And actually a lot of colleges don't have that either. So Danielle, I think you've mentioned the shared houses. Are there any other shared accommodation at Hughes?
No, so you would never at St Hugh's share a bedroom. By the shared houses, all that means is that you share a kitchen and a living space, but you always have your own room, and often even in some of the shared like the shared houses, you might still have your own ensuite. I think it's, yeah, if you come to St Hugh's, you'll either have an ensuite or you might be sharing a bathroom with maybe 3 to 4 people, but often that's with your friends, and I've never known it be a problem for anyone.
Great. And Catherine, what about at Queen's?
So the vast majority of our rooms are like single bedrooms, so you're not going to have to be sharing a bedroom space with anybody else. And most do have an ensuite as well, so that's nice and handy. Within the main site itself, though, the bathrooms are shared, so you might be sharing with other people on your corridor. I think none of our students have said that's ever been an issue, though, for them. Like, people do tend to keep it quite clean and tidy, and there are cleaners who come every day and make sure that those shared spaces are kept clean. There are a few shared sort of like what we call set rooms within college that if you wanted maybe from second year or third year, you could apply for with a friend, and then you would share some space with that person, and you would then pay a bit less than the ballot rate. So you might decide to do that in later years, but yeah, in first year, everybody gets their own room, and you wouldn't have to have a shared set room unless you actually really wanted to. No one would be forced to take that.
Great. And Lizzie?
So here at St Paul, all of our rooms are single rooms. We do have some rooms where you can have an adjoining room. So if you had a carer who perhaps needed to stay with you for any reason at any point in your studies, we do have fully accessible bedrooms, or upgrading to fully accessible with caring spaces attached to those. So that would be the only time that you'd be sharing bedroom space. We do have shared kitchens and bathrooms, of course, if you've not got an ensuite room, and our lovely humans clean those every day, so they're always in pretty good nick. And I certainly never had to do for a shower or anything, so it works pretty well, especially if everyone's on slightly different timetables. It's not everybody wanted to go in the shower at once, so it really does work, and I've never had any big problem.
Great. I think we'll move on now and talk a little bit about the sort of support of being in a college environment, and also the direct support that college gives. The first thing I wanted to ask on this topic was, I think some of our viewers, and we often get questions about this, might be worried that there is a specific type of person that goes to Oxford, and that they might not fit that type, and they might not fit in as a result. Which I think we would all say is not true, but we'll go around and ask everyone about this. So we'll start with Danielle. What would be your response if someone said that?
Yeah, it's definitely not true. I couldn't pinpoint an Oxford type. It's definitely not the stereotypical type that you necessarily see in the media. That's definitely not the Oxford type. Of all the people I know in college and all my friends, we've got people with diverse interests, diverse backgrounds, and I think that it's great that even within college you meet people who are interested in so many different things. You have really interesting conversations with different groups of people, and also if you are worried about will people from Oxford, for example, the stereotypes all be really posh, then we actually have lots of campaigns where you can meet people from similar backgrounds to you, which is really nice. So for example, we have Class Act, so you can meet people from working class backgrounds. We also have the First Gen campaign, so you don't need to worry, for example, if nobody in your family's ever been to university before. There's a whole group of students that share that experience. So you definitely, I think the way the college system works with all the different campaigns and that sort of thing, you can definitely find people like you and that share similar experiences to you. And I've definitely met lots of different people here as well.
Great. Lizzie, what would you say to someone who says there is an Oxford type?
I'd say there is an Oxford type, and it's people who are interested in their subject and excited to learn things and find new things out, and that's the only type. People are curious, people want to learn more. It's a really exciting place to be if that's the sort of thing that you enjoy. So I'd say that's the only unifying type. And of course, within that, people come from all sorts of backgrounds, different places. I certainly found that I made friends from a whole range of different backgrounds. My best friends, one grew up on a council estate in Hull and one went to the poshest school in Bristol, but we're all friends. Because when you come to Oxford, it's quite a leveler, even if you've been to different schools or you've had sort of different holidays or whatever when you grew up, or no holidays, that's absolutely fine. You meet people, and even if they are a bit different to you, you often do find things in common. And the college system is really good for that because you meet people repeatedly. You know, you get exposed to each other quite a lot. It's not like you just sort of see someone once and think, I'm not sure about you, and that's your only chance to be friends. You often find that your friendships evolve and you meet people over the course of your degree that you might not have thought you'd be friends with straight away, but you actually end up getting quite close to. So yeah, I think you can meet people from all sorts of backgrounds. There's no one to be scared of. Take people at face value and you might be surprised by who you end up being friends with. But the only Oxford type are people who are excited to learn and to study in their subjects.
Great. I just want to move on to talk about something else quickly before we go on to the questions that have been posed to us. So, Catherine, I wanted to ask you, what would happen? So if a student at Queen's was struggling academically, what support could they get? What would happen?
Yeah, so there's quite a varied system of support within Queen's. So I think the first port of call for if you were struggling with something academically, maybe struggling to meet a deadline, feel like you need an extension, or struggling to understand a particular problem or essay that you've been set, would be your academic tutor. They would be the first person to turn to. If it was a problem that was sort of it could be related to academics, it could be something separate, it could be feeling a bit homesick, it could be struggling with something to do with sexual health, physical health, mental health. We've got a welfare officer who is based within the college. She's called Jo. She is absolutely lovely, a really friendly face for students to turn to, and she works typically office hours, so she has she can arrange a set meeting with students. There's some students that she sees maybe once a week, twice a week, to support them if they feel that's something they need. Other students may never encounter Jo the whole time that they're there. Other students might sort of drop in every so often to chat to her. We've also got junior deans who are based within the different blocks of accommodation that we have to offer, and they are postgraduate students who are trained to deal with welfare issues confidentially. So if something cropped up overnight when Jo is not working, you could send them an email, get in touch with them, and they could support you. And this could be if you're really worried about yourself or worried about a friend, if you've done something silly, like you're coming back from a nightclub and you've tripped over and sprained your ankle, junior deans could, take you to A&E and make sure that you are looked after and patched up. But there's plenty of support available on sort of like the staff level, and we also find that students really do care for each other and look after each other. So every college will have a JCR, which is a body of student representatives, and they'll have welfare officers on the JCR. So we've got male, female, and non-binary welfare reps at Queen's who look after students' best interests and make sure that they can provide confidential support and advice. So there's always someone to turn to, whether you feel more comfortable chatting to a peer or you feel more comfortable chatting to maybe an academic tutor or to Jo. There's lots of people that you could go to, but hopefully you'd never need to, but it's reassuring to know that they are always there.
Great. And Danielle, perhaps you could talk a bit about support in college, not just academic, I guess, but also with other things, as Catherine has talked about.
Sure. So I guess within college, there's kind of maybe 3 different main types, and Catherine's already touched on them. So the student support is really great. So we have a JCR, which is sort of like the student, I guess the student union, but for the college. And on most colleges' student union, there'll be 1 or 2 welfare reps, maybe more. There's often also reps specifically for different marginalised groups. So for example, last year I was the disabled students rep, and my job was kind of to help direct students to support when they needed it, or talk about different things that I'd done which made life easier as a disabled student. So there's plenty of support for students that come from other students, whether it be trained peer support officers are also there to help. And I think something that's really nice about college is because it's so close-knit, you do feel like you get to know people a bit more. So that's really nice. I don't feel like you ever feel like you're alone in this city. And then in terms of tutors, they're, as Catherine mentioned, an academic tutor. They're also called your personal tutor often. So you can go to them if you're maybe struggling with the workload, or you're struggling to settle in, and they'll be able to signpost you onto more support, perhaps at a university-wide level, like the university-wide counselling service. The disability advisory service are really great. So if you were struggling and you thought, actually, I need more professional support than just the advice a tutor's giving me to help with my workload, you could then go to the university counselling service, who offer some sessions as well. And then on top of that, it differs depending on the size of college, but most colleges have a staff welfare team as well. So for example, we've got a brilliant diversity officer, and he ensures that everyone is respected in college and helps organise events as well, which can help with people kind of meeting other people in their community, which is great. We have a college nurse who's there to help with kind of any minor, if you have the freshers flu or something, she's there to help you, and also can help organise doctor's appointments and that sort of thing. So there really is a huge range of support available. I think, just as a word of advice, if you did for any reason find yourself struggling, whether here or at university in general, just try and speak up about it if you feel able to. There's plenty of people who want to help. They just need to know so that they can help you.
That's very good advice. Okay, I think we'll move on to answer some of the questions that have been submitted in the Q&A. So one question which we have touched on, someone's asked, is there a private / grammar / state school divide in any way? They've been to all three and don't know which group they'll fit in with. Well, I'll attempt to answer myself, and then I'll allow the panel to stick their hand up if they want to say anything as well. But in terms of there being a proportion from each of those types of school, that's absolutely true. There is a proportion from each of those types of school, and it's a reasonable proportion of all of them, as well as international applicants from international schools as well. In terms of a divide, I think we would say that there is no divide. People don't organize themselves into groups in that way, and groups usually permeate across all sorts of different backgrounds. That's been my experience of it anyway. I don't know if anyone in the panel feels like they want to respond to that. Lizzie?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I think you're absolutely right that groups don't tend to form along those lines. It doesn't tend to be, oh, you went to this school so you're friends with those people, you went to that school so you're friends with them. It's a lot more mixed than that. I mentioned briefly earlier that of my friends, one grew up in a council estate in Hull and went to her local comprehensive, and one had been to the top boarding school in Bristol. But we all really got on. We found out we actually had a lot more in common than perhaps we might have thought based on just that information. I think the thing you really recognise when you get to university in particular is there's so much more to people than just where they went to school. And yes, it can impact some things, it obviously relates to perhaps other things in people's backgrounds, but there's so much more variety. Especially the further you get through university, the more you really can't tell where people went to school. And the vast majority of people don't care either. If somebody walks up and goes, oh, I don't want to be friends with you because you didn't go to public school, well, then you wouldn't want to be friends with them anyway. But I don't think I've ever encountered that or really heard many stories of that either. So I really wouldn't worry, just turn up, be yourself, and you will find some great people.
Great, thank you. Okay, we've had, so let's have a look at another couple of questions here. So we've had a question about specifically where college netball teams train, but perhaps we can, and then they've also asked if there's a big difference between college and university level sport. Perhaps we could talk a bit more generally about where college sport actually takes place, and then the difference between university and college level sport. Does anyone feel able to tackle that one? Lizzie, again?
Yeah, absolutely. So it does vary a little bit. To start with the university and college point, university teams tend to be populated, at least initially, by people who've played before, who perhaps have some ability, including some people who might have played sort of international youth levels, just up to people who maybe played a bit of county or played for their school, perhaps that kind of thing. But equally, if you're brand new to a sport and it turns out you're pretty good at it and you commit to it, then you can absolutely get into some of those university first teams. We've had people in the rowing boat race who never rowed before they got to Oxford, so you definitely can do that. So if you're quite serious about your sport, definitely have a look on the Sports Federation website, and you can see what teams are available, perhaps get an idea of the level. College sport, it can vary a little bit. So here at St Edmund Hall, we've got a lot of first and second teams, just because we've got because we have a go atmosphere here. We have a lot of students who'd like to try different sports, whether they're particularly good or not so good. And so our first teams are quite serious. For example, our rugby team will train at least once or twice a week. They're quite a serious team, but we also have a second team who just meet up on a Sunday morning and throw the ball about. So you can do a little bit of both. When it comes to facilities, one or two colleges have on-site fields. I think some of the ones on the edges of the city centre. Most others will have sports pitches in North Oxford or down by the river. We actually share one with Queen's, which is on the river, and it's got a lovely pavilion and some tennis courts and some pitches. It's a 10-15 minute cycle away, as are most of the facilities used by university teams. So it's all very accessible.
Great, thank you. And you mentioned university sports might be populated with people who've done it before, and colleges might be more people trying it for the first time. There are also some sports, and not just sport, but other societies and things that are slightly perhaps more niche, and that don't have a massive group of people across the university that that participate. So the university might have a society, and that will be full of people who've never done it before and just want to have a go, and it's not quite got to that level where colleges are doing it as well yet. So there are a few things like that. So for instance, I think the university has an American football team, but American football hasn't quite reached colleges yet as a sport. It doesn't quite have enough participants yet. But as things grow, if you're interested in something like that, you could definitely start a society at your college. I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest. Okay, we've had a question, this question sort of about student life. So I'm going to put this one to Danielle, if that's okay. So what is a typical weekend like at your college? That's the question.
So that's really difficult because it depends massively on your subject. So because with law, we don't have as many contact hours as maybe a science subject does. So sometimes if I've taken a weekend on sort of maybe Tuesday and Wednesday, I might actually be working throughout the weekend. But if I was taking the weekend as a time to relax, then often I would go for brunch with my friends in the morning, probably at St. Hugh's. I might watch kind of a couple of lectures throughout the day just to keep that ticking over. There's been loads of great things to do over summer. So we've got punting really close to us, and maybe I might do something like if my friends are involved in a production, I might go and see that in the evening. So they're really, it's a difficult question because there really is no typical weekend. But I think what there always is plenty of stuff on to do. So whether you want to go to a bar with some friends, you want to see some theatre, you want to try out a new sport, there are all of those options. And it does depend a little bit about how you arrange your time and whether you choose to have kind of your strict weekend as your time off and then your week as the time you work, or whether you prefer to do fewer hours but work a little bit every day.
Great, thank you. So let's have a look, see if we've got any other questions to answer. So we also had a question about sharing rooms and sharing bathrooms. I think we answered that one earlier, so that's fine. We've got a question here. What is your top tip for the application process, such as personal statements and interviews? Perhaps we go around all three quickly on this one. So Catherine.
Top tip would be just break it down and look at each section as it comes. I think it can be very easy to think, oh my goodness, some of you in year 12 are starting your personal statements now, and it's a process that is going to keep going. UCAS application is October, interviews December, you'll find out January, and then you still have to keep applying yourself and working hard to get those grades in August. So it can be a year-long process, and that can feel pretty daunting. So I think really just try to not obsess about the step that is to come, but focus on the thing that you are doing at the time. So whether that is writing your personal statement or preparing for the admissions test or prepping for an interview or working for those A-level grades, just break it down and take each step as it comes, and you can only do your best. So do spend some time over summer preparing for, personal statement, admissions tests, but do not obsess over it. Just do as much as you feel that you possibly can, and yeah, don't make it the only thing that you care about. Try to enjoy the fact that you're studying some subjects at A-level that you really love, and don't make that the be-all and end-all of your year 12, year 13 experience.
Great, thanks. Let's go to Danielle next.
I think for me, I'd say just try to be authentic. Don't try and be someone you're not. So often, for example, for law, but this applies for all subjects, students get really nervous that they won't appear clever enough, or they won't have done enough impressive things to put on their personal statement. But actually, it sounds cheesy, but tutors really want to just see how you think. So you might be worried that maybe you haven't done some fantastic internship with a big corporate firm over summer, and that's absolutely fine. If you've read a really interesting case in a newspaper, or you've picked up a book, that's totally fine. Just talk passionately about it. And the same applies for the whole interview process. I think tutors can tell when someone is being fake, so they just want to see someone who's passionate about their subject, who's really engaging with it. You don't have to know everything. If you did, you wouldn't be coming to university. So it's totally fine to be looking at something and go, actually, I don't know, these are my thoughts so far. You don't have to worry about being this kind of perfected student. The point is that when you turn up to interview and you submit your application, they want someone with the potential that they can then work with, not someone that comes as that kind of perfect person already.
Great, thank you. We're very nearly out of time, so just before we go, I'm going to very quickly put our panelists on the spot and ask them to say what their absolute favourite thing or the best thing about their college is in no more than 10 words. And we'll start with Lizzie.
You can be who you want to be and nobody minds.
And then Catherine.
For Queen's, it's the library. It's on BuzzFeed's list of top 25 libraries to see before you die. Google it. It's beautiful. It's a lovely space to study. That was more than 10 words. Sorry.
You're forgiven. And Danielle.
The super friendly people, St. Hugh's Branch, the gardens, and of course the cats.
Great, thanks very much. So thank you everyone for tuning in to the live stream today and for participating in our virtual open days. I hope you found this session and the rest of the open days informative. Do keep an eye on websites and make contact with colleges, ask questions. As was mentioned earlier, look at social media feeds as well, especially those run by the students. Try and find out more. And thank you all for tuning in today. Thanks also to our 3 excellent panelists as well for all of their helpful information. But that's us for today. So we'll say goodbye. Thank you.